So the big question, and why is Trump always in the news? Is it hard to figure out? Listen to what the guy says. Good to have you with us on this Wednesday edition of Ed Schultz News and Commentary from the North Country. So Chris Christie's upset because he gets asked questions about Donald Trump. Trump doesn't quit. He just continues to game the news cycle. You don't have to look any further than today's news in his most recent comment on how he would fight ISIS as to why he gets so much attention. And I guarantee you that I can go down the road here and pick out the first bar in the middle of the country and go in there and ask patrons, what do you think about this? And they'd say, you goddamn right. Trump says that he would target the families and the civilians of the terrorists. That's how he would fight ISIS. And I think that this is one of the reasons why Trump is leading in the polls. He has an unvarnished opinion. He's not owned by anybody. And damn it, this is what he would do. He'd fight fire with fire. Listen to him.
I would knock the hell out of ISIS.
Well, we see that happening in
the other thing
Ramadi.
is with the terrorists, you have to take out their families. When you get these terrorists, you have to take out their families. They care about their lives. Don't kid yourself. But they say they don't care about their lives. You have to take out their families.
You have to take out their families. Now, I think that there's a lot of Americans across the country that are saying, well, they do cut off the heads of people barbarically, so we're going to fight fire with fire. I think this is going to play well for Trump. I do. Because I think that there's a lot of Americans frustrated in the way that we are executing this strategy against ISIS. And so the fire with fire, who cares if we're immoral and barbaric? That's war. I mean, I'm not saying that this is what I think we should do, but this is where I believe people are going to come down on this. Now, Trump leads, despite all of the controversy about how many Muslims were cheering on 9/11 and what he saw, he still leads in the polls by a sizable margin. He's at 27%. Marco Rubio is 10 points back. And then, of course, Ted Cruz is at 16%. And who's left the building? Pretty much, it is the doctor. Dr. Carson has fallen in the polls. So the story that has been trying to knock down Trump from other Republicans that these Muslims were cheering on 9/11, he got a little bit of backup. Not that I consider Rudy Giuliani a big source, but the fact of the matter is he was the mayor of New York when we got hit on September 11th, 2001. He is saying, yes, there were people that were cheering.
I do have distinct recollection of having reported to me by the police a number of incidents, several. I will read to you from an article, September 14th, 2001, Fred Siegel, New York Post. This is back then.
Okay.
Here in New York, it was easy to get angry listening to Egyptians, Palestinians, and the Arabs of nearby Paterson, New Jersey, celebrate as they receive word of the murderous attacks in New York and Washington. I can tell you, reported to me. Now, I didn't say them, so
understood.
It could be wrong. Reported to me by the police were attacks in Brooklyn, Queens, and in the Bronx.
When you say attacks, what
meaning there were a couple of these incidents where the Muslims were celebrating and people attacked them. There certainly were celebrations.
This is all the backup that Donald Trump needs. He doesn't need videotape of thousands of people. He just needs a morsel of information or someone to step forward and corroborate what he saw, and he's home free. And this is one of the reasons why Trump isn't going to back down on any of this. So the frustration plays out at a press conference that was supposed to deal with drug addiction, and a reporter asked Christie about Trump, and this is the reaction.
And you all, quite frankly, should be ashamed of yourselves. All you do is ask about Donald Trump. I go every place I go, and then I have the press complain to me, why do you think Donald Trump's doing so well? Well, hell, man, if you're talking about him 24 hours a day, anybody can do well. So,
well, Mr. Christie, let me give you a quick lesson on the news media. This, to go after the families of terrorists, is a major shift in strategy. In the United States, you'd have to go back to the bombing of Dresden in World War II when we bombed civilians trying to break the will of the German people. It's not like we haven't done it before, but Trump has said we would go after families. Mr. Christie, do you agree with that? Would you go after the families of the terrorists? This is why Trump is getting attention. I want Ruth Conniff to get her take on this. She is the editor of the Progressive magazine. Ruth, good to have you with us today.
Great to be with you, Ed.
Unpack this for us. Your thoughts on this news cycle that is continually owned by Trump.
Well, it's fascinating to watch, really, because the Republican Party is
paralyzed by Trump. And there's a big article in the New York Times this morning about the basically Senator Lindsey Graham, other Senate leaders, and all of these advisors and other politicians who speak anonymously saying, oh, my God, this guy is going to cost the Republican Party not just the White House, potentially, but the Senate, because he is going to so completely galvanize every uninterested voter who might not be as excited as they were when Obama after 2008, when Obama got out all these new voters, but minorities, women, everybody that Trump targets and smears is going to come out in droves to vote the Republican Party out of office. And this is the Republican Party itself that's really worried about this. So there's now behind the scenes this campaign to try to take Trump down. And what they can't figure out is how do they do it without making him stronger? Because he thrives on being the anti-establishment candidate. He thrives on attacks. And people are afraid of being attacked by him. And furthermore, the Republican Party now has a bunch of candidates who are trying to sound like Trump, which is, metastasizing the damage that he's doing with Latino voters and women in particular, who they really can't afford to lose in a giant group.
Well, clearly the next question from most journalists, I think, is going to be to the other candidates. What do you think about targeting the families of terrorists? I mean, isn't that the natural follow-up? To draw a contrast and comparison? What do you think?
I think that the other candidates are likely to go along with that idea because, look, this is the party that has drummed up so much hatred of abortion clinics, Planned Parenthood, doctors, that they have pushed us over the edge in this country. They have been flirting with extreme, violent nastiness here at home. Talking about people in other countries is nothing compared to that. So I think this is another example of Trump pushing the party in a direction that is really dangerous. And it's dangerous not just to the ultimate fate of the Republican Party, but really to our country. It's a very, very crude and vicious, nasty politics. And of course it catches on. There's a real potential for stirring up the crazy in this country, and it's dangerous. We've seen it before.
Ruth Conniff with us, editor of the Progressive Magazine. What about Rudy Giuliani? This has been a story that's now in its second week about what Trump said, what Muslims were doing in New Jersey when we got hit on 9/11. Does Rudy Giuliani give Trump a credible exit from this controversy? That this might put it to rest, that, Trump didn't see thousands, but there were people who were doing it. Even Giuliani, the mayor of New York, said he was aware of it. What about that?
Well, first of all, I think it's a great news week for Giuliani anytime he gets to talk about 9/11 again. I mean, you remember his presidential campaign when it was the only thing that he ever talked about, sort of destroying the good feeling that was left over from his leadership right after 9/11 by just cashing in on that. I don't think Trump minds the controversy. Trump is all about controversy. He's the Ann Coulter of the Republican field. So this is, I don't think important to rescue Trump, but I think, again, it's an example of a really crude kind of politics that's, the Republicans have spent all week talking about how telling people that abortion doctors are Nazis doesn't cause crazy people to want to shoot them, which is not a credible argument. It's the same thing here. Talking about Muslims as being this, animal-like, vicious group of people is going to cause some really nasty stuff, and we've seen it before. We've seen attacks not just on Muslims, but on anybody who looks vaguely brown across America when we see this drumbeat of xenophobia, and it's bad. It's bad stuff, and I think it serves a particular political purpose in the Republican primary, and the nation pays the price for it.
Is this a surge by Marco Rubio? The latest poll, Trump at 27, Rubio up to 17, Cruz at 16. Cruz doing very well, by the way, in Iowa. This is a national poll. And Ben Carson falls. Still Trump with a double-digit margin, but certainly a better number for Rubio. What do you think?
I think Rubio is the great hope of the Republican establishment, and I think that a lot of the support for Rubio is this really, really strong hope that the Cruz wave doesn't go anywhere because Cruz is so despised and crazy and mean, and I think that you'll see whether Rubio really has the chops that people, it's a Hail Mary with Rubio. He's young, he's Latino, and that sounds good to Republicans. I don't know that he's really such a strong candidate, but he's sort of the only one in the race that looks sane, and I think that's why people are really hoping for him.
Ruth Conniff, always great to visit. I appreciate your time. Thanks, Ruth.
Great to be with you, Ed. Thanks.
Editor of the Progressive Magazine with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary, brought to you by Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team. Now, when we come back, Hillary Clinton did an interview with Charlie Rose, and all this criticism about what strategy to use against ISIS. Is there a change with Hillary Clinton versus Barack Obama? That's next. Stay with us. Hey, folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com. www.biogreenclean and order today. It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns. It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor. They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
Good to have you with us on Ed Schultz News and Commentary on this Wednesday edition. All right, a lot of criticism coming from the right and the Republican Party about the strategy President Obama is using to try to take down ISIS. Well, in an interview with Charlie Rose, Hillary Clinton didn't offer a whole lot of difference. Here it is.
I agree with the president's point that we're not putting American combat troops back into Syria or Iraq. We are not going to do that.
Under no circumstances would you not do that?
Well, at this point, I cannot conceive of any circumstances where I would agree to do that.
Folks, we are carrying the load here. There have been over 8,000 airstrikes on ISIS targets. The United States has done over 6,000 of those targets. For more on this, 6,000 of those bombings. Let's go to Steve Clemons, Washington editor-at-large for The Atlantic. Great to have you with us, Steve.
Good morning, Ed.
What do you make of Hillary Clinton? Basically, no real change in strategy at all. And is this going to help her or hurt her?
I think that, some of the things we haven't heard in that recent interview, but that she had said, which is a notch forward, is that she very much wants to see a no-fly zone implemented inside Syria. And so that's a slightly more muscular step than the president has done, and I think that inoculates her a little bit from the criticism that she's not doing anything more than this administration would do.
Yeah.
But I think that there is a fear out in the United States after watching what happened in Paris, after hearing about a bomb in Sharm el-Sheikh that came through somehow through the system of security inside an airport. And Americans are beginning to think, oh, my God, what happens if that happens here? And that is something that is creating a frustration with current policy and putting demands on both the GOP candidates and Hillary Clinton to sort of come up with something. What she doesn't want to say is if there was some incident in New York that was like Paris, yeah, we would be all in, and nobody wants to basically articulate that.
One thing that she did articulate, I thought pretty clearly, is her strategy with the Russians. Here it is.
The Russians have now paid a big price because of the bomb in their jet coming from Sharm el-Sheikh. So they've lost people to ISIS, right? I think you say, look, we need your, if not your active help, your acquiescence in what we're going to do going after ISIS. So that means you're going to have to pull back from this area while we go after their leadership and their economic infrastructure. But if you want to be part of that, we would welcome you. And you have a dog in this hunt now because you're worried about what's happening in the Caucasus. You're worried about ISIS spreading its ideology.
That's pretty much straight talk. I mean, she would basically tell the Russians, I don't know what Obama told Putin, but other than, not focus on Assad and focus on ISIS, but that was pretty clear, I thought, by Hillary Clinton.
No, I think that was tough talk from Hillary, and I think it is a realist interpretation that Russia and the United States share some interests and we don't share some others. And on some of what's going on inside Syria, we can perhaps coordinate, communicate, and at least keep the Russians from getting in the way. My sense is she also needs to understand that the Russians are there in part to protect Assad and Russia's own interests in dictating the future of Syria from their perspective. And that's not going to be a love fest. That's going to be problematic, and we're not going to be on the same page because we don't agree with the Russians about protecting the current infrastructure of leadership inside Syria.
So that's the $64 question. Can we get the Russians to work with us fighting ISIS and focus more on that than what their other interests are? And I don't know how you do that.
Well, I think you can. I mean, I think one of the interesting things is that while I think Putin went into Syria and went into it in part to protect Assad, but also in part to embarrass President Obama, and he thought he was getting a quick hit against the U.S. and that made Russians look more muscular by having their first military involvement in the Middle East in 42 years. The problem with the bombing and with the other incidents that have now occurred is that it now forces Putin to go deeper. He's not in control of the situation anymore. His public is angry about the bombing of their plane and the likely other deaths, the shoot down of the pilot. So if Putin wanted, his perhaps frivolous decision now has to be a serious one because he's got skin in the game and he's got public pressure inside Russia that's going to demand more performance. And so the odd thing is Russia's and Vladimir Putin's course are now constrained by circumstances that he has no choice but to really take on ISIS in a more concrete way because they've attacked Russia.
Because of the political will of the people, that's going to force his hand. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Donald Trump says that if he were in charge, he would target the families of terrorists. Now, I want to frame it this way. We're trying to put a coalition together to go after ISIS, a collective world gathering of powers that will have skin in the game to understand the severity of this problem. If we were to do that, what do you think that would do to the possibility of keeping a coalition together? Wouldn't there have to be other hands on deck that would go along with a strategy like that?
I think Donald Trump's irresponsibility on a daily basis is just staggering. The notion that the United States of America, with protections of citizens, that doesn't hold one citizen responsible for another citizen's actions, where somebody or family members. We had family members in Europe that were related to one of the assailants, the bombers, who's still on the run, who wanted to see him dead, who didn't want him in the family. So Donald Trump's just in unbelievable, brutal disregard for the rights of people is something that won't hold any coalition together. It won't hold the United States together.
Steve Clemons with us, Washington editor-at-large for The Atlantic. Steve, always good to visit. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ed.
Appreciate it. Well, the Republicans, they know what to do with power, don't they? Now they're going after Obamacare. And who's on the Senate floor battling away to try to shake the reality out of them? And that is Bernie Sanders. We'll have that. Tim Ryan joins us, the congressman from Ohio, talking about the House budget. And will McCarthy be able to move forward and make the deadline of December 11th to continue to fund the government? That's next. Stay with us on Ed Schultz News and Commentary.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary coming to you on this Wednesday edition. Thanks for the view. Thanks for the download. You can get it at WeGotEd.com, RawStory.com, and RingOfFireRadio.com. All right, now, these are two stories that I think parallel one another that are total confusion, but also an example of how the Republicans are completely out of touch with the American people. Do you see any demonstrations across the country to get rid of Obamacare? Do you see people in the streets saying, let's just turn this around? No. What I see is people in the streets trying to make sure that the cops don't shoot minorities. I mean, that's what's happening in this country right now, is there's somewhat of a social rebellion about policing in this country. I don't see them going after Obamacare. So Kevin McCarthy is the majority leader. And this is what he says about what the American people want as far as Congress doing work.
Well, I think change does make a difference. I think Paul Ryan is doing a tremendous job. You get a generational change coming forward. I think the American people have spoken to those that are sitting in Congress and realize they got to get their work done. And there's an opportunity. Structure dictates behavior.
Okay, that's the key. That's the key. Get their work done. Well, let me tell you what they're working on. Right now, of course, we know where the House stands on getting rid of Obamacare. Right now, they're talking about reconciliation in the Senate to get rid of Obamacare, to send it to the president and force him to veto it. So who steps to the plate? Good old Bernie Sanders on the Senate floor yesterday, just pointing out a minor statistic.
What this legislation does is move us in exactly the wrong direction. It would throw more than 17 million Americans off of health insurance by gutting the Affordable Care Act. So we have a health care crisis, and this bill makes the crisis much worse.
And we all know that the Republicans do not have a replacement at all. So 17 million Americans seeing them get rid of their health care. Is that the work of the American people that McCarthy is talking about? These people make shit up is what they do. And they say, well, this is what the American people want. No, they don't. There's no march anywhere. There's no march anywhere to privatize Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. It's just them ramrodding through their ideology and their philosophy on how they want the country run. So this kind of stuff doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence that we're going to see a budget resolution where we're going to be able to make sure that the government doesn't shut down. Planned Parenthood and Syrian refugees are going to come front and center in the 11th hour on December 10th. For more on that, let's go to Congressman Tim Ryan, who's on the House Budget Committee. Tim, good to have you with us.
Big Eddie's fired up this morning.
Well, if I'm wrong, brother, tell me. Straighten me out. What do you think?
I agree with you 1,000%. And I hope cooler heads prevail. We still have this group in the House. We talked about this last time I was on your show. There's still this group of extremists in the House that are driving that Planned Parenthood and the refugees and all of these issues. And, again, they don't mind shutting the government down. I'm hoping that we can find some way to thread the needle here. And you were talking about Obamacare. I find it hilarious if it wasn't so sad. But we just got a report out just yesterday saying that Obamacare has saved 87,000 lives from hospital mistakes that have happened over the years. Since 2010, we've saved 87,000 lives and $20 billion not spent on extra medical care because of what's happening in the Affordable Care Act, and because they have reduced the number of mistakes that have been made in hospitals over the last 4 years. So here's a perfect example of, wait a minute, you don't want to save 87,000 lives. You don't want to save $20 billion in the kind of care that we have to give after mistakes are made. And that's what would happen if they repealed Obamacare. So these guys, as you said, they just make stuff up. They keep trying to hit their base. The Republican presidential primary has dragged all these guys, even if they're semi-moderate, have to be extremely conservative at this point.
You know, Congressman, here's what we don't hear from the Republicans. If they want to get rid of Obamacare, they don't step to the plate and say, we have a better idea, we have a better way, we're going to do a better job with these 17 million people. In fact, we're going to get more people insured. I don't hear that. No. All I hear is get rid of it and let's turn it over to the insurance industry and they'll figure it out. That's basically where they are.
Right, exactly. And that's, they say, we will get the government out of the relationship between the doctor and the patient. And, we need to say, get the insurance company out of the middle of that relationship, because there's a lot of people who would be getting a lot more care or better care if not for the insurance company saying, oh, no, we're not going to pay for that. Oh, no, we're not going to pay for that. We know it may cost more in the long run, but we're not paying for it. Someone else will.
Okay. All right. I want to turn to a serious subject now, and that's college football for a moment, if we can, okay? You're a Buckeye fan. You think Iowa's really an undefeated team? I mean, what do you think? I mean, okay, they haven't lost any games. I know that, but are they good? Are they going to be in the 4? Are they going to be in the showdown? What do you think?
You know what? They're a solid team, and they are undefeated, and I think they're very good. It's nice to have a Big Ten team in there. We saw what happened last year when people were poor mouthing the Buckeyes when they went in and very.
I thought I'd let you weave that in there, not me.
They barely made it in the number 4 slot last year, and we all know that they were the first undisputed national champions in the history of college football. But anyway, I think Iowa has a shot.
What about Ohio State?
Well, I think it's going to depend on the USC-Stanford game this week to see what happens. What I'm hearing is either Rose Bowl or possibly the Fiesta Bowl against Notre Dame, which would be a great game.
Mm-hmm. Injuries at TCU changed that team. That quarterback had been healthy. I think TCU would be right there undefeated, but that's the way it goes. That's all part of the game.
Yeah.
All right.
It's been fun. It's been a fun year.
Did you have a good holiday? I hope you did.
I had great, man. I got a 17-month-old son, so I'm just loving life.
Enjoy every stage. Congressman, good to have you with us. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Big Eddie. Take care.
All the best. Tim Ryan with us, Congressman from Ohio. This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team bring you this production. We're back tomorrow.